It's time. Welcome in. Here we are once again on the Front Office Podcast. I am your host, Pistols. We are here once again, continuing on with our division series. We only got a few divisions left to get through before our draft episode. Today, we go over the NFC West. Last week, we did the AFC West, moving right along into the other divisions. The NFC West is an interesting one. Obviously, you have the Super Bowl champion Seahawks. We have the Arizona Cardinals, the San Francisco 49ers, and the LA Rams. All of these teams have made some interesting moves this year so far in free agency. As far as free agency is concerned, you always try to make your team better, right? What that means for fantasy is just a little bit more evaluation in when it comes to drafting your teams, making sure the opportunity is there for these guys to put up points on your teams and on your rosters. Let's get right into it. Right now, we're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. What is there to say about the Arizona Cardinals? Some interesting moves this season so far. In this offseason, they had drafted Kyler Murray, gave him a chance, and released him this offseason. So he goes over to Minnesota, and they bring in Gardner Minshew, among decent quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett, who played very well in the absence of Kyler Murray as he was battling injury. And then I think when Kyler was healthy, they continued to go with Jacoby Brissett. They won a couple games, not many. As the Cardinals, they haven't really been able to win with Kyler Murray. They do have a new head coach. I can't remember the guy's name. The offensive coordinator from the Rams, actually. He took the job, and they have a new system in place. The quarterback situation there is interesting. Like I said, they bring in Gardner Minshew. He has proven himself to be a winner in this league. He's been on multiple teams so far. Kind of can't hold that starting position, but he's certainly a viable backup. We see Jacoby Brissett kind of take over that offensive room there. They draft Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, or the year before. I think it was the year before. So he's going into year 3, and hopefully he can make a leap forward as far as helping out the receiving core there. He has had Mike LaFleur. Thank you. Yes, Mike LaFleur. He was offensive coordinator over in the Rams. Comes over now as the head coach of the Cardinals here. They're just interesting to me because Kyler Murray was overrated, in my opinion, and that might be a hot take, and you can quote me on it. He might have been overrated, honestly. He couldn't get the job done. He's had some good games. He had DeAndre Hopkins at one point in his career, and I, as a Bills fan, know the Hail Murray was against the Bills to lose that game against Arizona on a DeAndre Hopkins catch in the end zone, surrounded by 4 Buffalo Bills defenders. Still haunts me. People still bring it up. I hate it. Just like they bring up 13 seconds with the Chiefs and every other playoff loss that the Bills had. I still get people that bring up 4 Super Bowl losses in a row, which is really fun to deal with. But Kyler Murray had some games, but now they bring in Jacoby Brissett, and Mike LaFleur seems that he seems to be okay with that, and bringing in Gardner Minshew. They also signed Kendrick Bourne from the Patriots. Sorry, the Patriots is a cuss word in my vocabulary. Kendrick Bourne, actually, I believe he came over from San Francisco. Kendrick Bourne did, but he used to be a Patriot. But Kendrick Bourne, yeah, exactly. Yeah, whatever. Tomato. Kendrick Bourne, he had a pretty decent season, filling in for all the injuries that the 49ers had to endure last season. They were riddled with them, but Arizona is interesting. They don't really have anybody too draft worthy for fantasy besides Trey McBride, who led all tight ends by like 400 yards of offense. I think he had over 1,200 yards receiving, and I think the next closest was like Kyle Pitts at like 880 or 980 or something like that. Either way, Trey McBride's probably the only draft worthy guy there. Marvin Harrison Jr. is, in my opinion, and here's another hot take about the Arizona Cardinals, not as good as everybody thinks he is. I know he came from Ohio State, and I know who his dad is, but I see a lot of laziness on the field in his route running and his ability. Had some pretty bad drops the past 2 seasons, which really are concerning for any offense. You're not going to win games if your guys can't catch the ball. They really relied heavily later on in the season on Michael Wilson, who had a pretty decent end to the season. But as far as the Arizona Cardinals are concerned, they're going to be on the bottom of this division for a very long time, at least until Matt Stafford decides he's ready to retire, which he's coming back for another year, who we're going to go over next. But they bring in a lot of offensive tackles and guards and defensive guys to try and do anything this free agency to help their team win. Mike LaFleur is a first-time head coach for them, so it'll be interesting to see where they go there. They did bring back James Conner, so having him signed or extended, I believe they didn't re-sign him. He wasn't a free agent, but like I said, they brought in Kendrick Bourne. They bring in Devin Duvernay. Devin Duvernay he started as a Baltimore Raven, kind of made his way around the league as a return guy. Nothing to really help you out there, but the Cardinals are just, they're kind of one of those teams that, I said it on the last episode too about the little brother that just hangs around. The Cardinals are kind of that at the bottom of the division, and they're going to be there for a while. Moving on to the Rams, though. Now, the Rams are gearing up for a tremendous season. Stafford decides to come back. He's there for another year. They trade for Trent McDuffie, and they take Jalen Watson from the Chiefs as well to really kind of help that secondary out. But the Rams overall are a very, very complete team. As far as offense goes, and their defense is solid. But of course, here in fantasy football, unless you're in an IDP league, which nobody really is, offense is what matters. And when you have Puka Nacua, who is damn near one of the best receivers I've ever seen, and Devontae Adams on the other side, who is also staying in LA for another year. I believe he had like 14 touchdowns, and Puka had like 11 or 10 or 11 or something like that. But the Rams, to me, are probably on paper the best team in the division. Obviously, it's hard to say that they are the best team since the Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl. But we'll get to them in a little bit. But the Rams, Stafford, we saw win the MVP. He's a guy that I've always been a fan of. Guy has just battled just nonstop adversity his entire career. First of all, getting drafted to the Lions. He had a very, very good Calvin Johnson on his team for a very long time that helped him in Detroit a lot. It was one of those situations where you kind of never knew Matt Stafford was going to throw for 5,000 yards, and he did it like 3 times with the Lions. Now it does help that you have a Calvin Johnson, and it helps that you have a Puka Nacua now and a Devontae Adams now. Those are your big guys that your Devontae Adams is your red zone target. He's not going to put up a ton of yards anymore. He's getting up there in age, but Puka Nacua is your guy that can create a ton of separation and is always there for a big play. Puka Nacua is definitely a first-round draft pick in my book. I said that last year after his rookie season. I get into arguments all the time that, maybe he's a system guy, and Coach McVay is just a guru of, whatever you want to call him. But when Puka's out there, the teams have to account for him. Demonte's out there, teams have to account for him. They have a really good young running back tandem in Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, who they started to kind of work into their system a little bit as he's gotten more comfortable coming into year 4, I think it is, for Corum, and year 5 for Kyron Williams, I believe. Someone will have to check me on that, but I'm almost positive. But they bring back Tyler Higbee, their tight end. They also saw kind of an emergence of Cody Parkinson, their other tight end. Had some pretty big games for them down the stretch. In my opinion, I'm very happy with Puka Nacua as my wide receiver 1. I'm very happy as Devontae Adams as my wide receiver 2. I'm very happy as Kyron Williams as my running back 2. He's probably a late second, early third round running back. Obviously, if you get Puka Nacua, you're going to get, so far it's been 1,800 yards. I think he hit that back-to-back years. I know JSN kind of out-nudged him a little bit on the receiving title by only a few yards. I'd have to look up the stats, but we don't do research on the show, so that's all you get right now is you get my memory. Hopefully it's as good as I think it is, but who's to tell? And no one's checking me anyway, so it doesn't matter. But either way, the Rams are going to be tough to beat this year, as they were last year. They played really good football. I expect the same from them moving forward into 2026, 2027. So as long as Matt Stafford's my quarterback, I have no trouble in paradise there. I've always been a big fan of Kyron Williams, and I'll go back to him. I think he's a very good running back. He catches a lot out of the backfield. He can run straight up the middle. He's got he's got the best all around ability in my opinion. I love Kyron Williams. I liked him for a long time now. I get into arguments about him as well, saying that he's not as good as people think. I beg to differ. But with Blake Corum there, they are going to try and work in some sort of 50-50 split there, I would imagine. But as far as I'm concerned, the Rams are the best team in the division, and it's not even close. Moving on to the 49ers. Some big moves from the 49ers. The 49ers, in my opinion, have the best system. And we see it we constantly see it with Brock Purdy, who was the Mr. Irrelevant pick in whatever year he was drafted. I think it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago, something like that. He's had some pretty good teams around him, with Christian McCaffrey coming over from the Panthers in that big trade that everybody saw and went crazy over. He's had Brandon Ayuk, who is now injured and probably not going to be there this year. But they bring in Mike Evans from Tampa. Mike Evans, still, even at age 32, is a force to be reckoned with. He is a big body guy who has no problem boxing you out and making a tough contested catch. That, to me, is exactly what Brock Purdy needs. But as I was saying about the system, Brock Purdy gets hurt. We saw Mac Jones come in. I know you love that, Mac Jones, Matt, but with the system, it worked because they still won games without Brock Purdy. Mac Jones is a very good backup for them, as is any quarterback that goes in there, because Brock Purdy seems to get injured year after year, and whoever's back there seems to do pretty well for them. I believe we saw Sam Darnold there at one point as well, 2 seasons ago, before he went to, I think it was Minnesota. Played very well when Brock Purdy got hurt yet again. Oh boy. But they bring in Mike Evans. Mr. Consistency. Got like 11, I believe it's 11,000 yard seasons in a row. Would have been 12 if he didn't get hurt. But they also bring in Christian Kirk, who's a really good receiver in my opinion as well. Now, these guys definitely probably should be drafted in fantasy because, they have to throw the ball to somebody. And if George Kittle keeps getting hurt the way he gets hurt, he's due to miss some time too. George Kittle has always been a top tier tight end. It's really hard for me to talk about tight ends though, because the production last year from tight ends was so bad that it's really hard to think that they're relevant in fantasy anymore, which I keep saying it. It's becoming an irrelevant position in fantasy football. Outside of a couple guys, you're not really getting the production that you expect out of a tight end anymore, which is sad because we had such great tight ends in the league for years. Now, not saying that they're not great, but they just serve a different purpose now. So you're not really looking to gain a ton of points from them. But for the most part, it's 49ers are... I'm very happy with 49ers on my roster. Of course, Christian McCaffrey's still a first-round pick. He's going to lead my backfield all day long, and I will let him. I believe he averaged over like 22 points per game, I think. It ended up being for fantasy and fantasy owners who had him on their roster. They got a very, very nice payout. I'm sure if you had Christian McCaffrey on your roster, probably won your league. Unless your other draft picks were just not that good. But I expect the 49ers to be just as competitive as they always are. There's 4 teams in each division, and this could be another situation where 3 of these teams make the playoffs again. It seems to be the case year after year when you have a strong division like this one. But the last team that we're going to talk about, the Seattle Seahawks. Now, they've had a very interesting free agency so far. Their offseason did not go how I expected it to go. They let Kenneth Walker go, explore free agency. He gets a massive deal from the Chiefs. He's in a just as good situation there with Patrick Mahomes and company to be the number 1 running back. I could see him finishing in the top 5 if he stays healthy, which was an interesting move to me because Zach Charbonnet, their backup, got hurt in the playoffs, I believe sometime in January. I don't see him coming back in time for week 1, so I have no idea what they're doing at running back. But they do extend Jackson Smith and Jigba to some crazy $42 million a year deal, I believe it was, which is just insane for a wide receiver. It's 120 guaranteed. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people got JSN pretty late in drafts last year and got really first round production out of him. Sam Darnold comes in from Minnesota, who's kicking themselves straight in the ass for letting him go because they had to deal with a bunch of mediocrity at quarterback. They have one of the best wide receivers on their roster, and nobody could get him the ball. But JSN comes in. They re-sign Rashid Shaheed. Try and say that 12 times fast. I dare you. The Seattle Seahawks, obviously they just win the Super Bowl, but their team looks different. They let some of their defensive guys go as well. They bring in some, they re-sign a couple of their guys. But I said it in the last episode too. It's not about what you look like on paper. It's how teams perceive you on the field. So looking at the Seattle offense now as it sits, you have JSN, you have Rashid Shaheed, and you have Jake Bobo, who is a third or fourth wide receiver on their team. I know they have the Torrey Horton kid that they drafted last year who showed some flashes late in the season. But to me, they don't have a running back. Like I said, Charbonnet is out most likely for at least half the year. So whatever they're going to do at running back is very confusing to me, because now when teams line up on defense, they need to cover two players, and that's JSN, and make sure they know what Sam Darnold's doing. And that's kind of where my, I guess if you can call it, skepticism. I don't believe JSN is going to put up the same numbers he put up last year. Maybe he'll get close, but I expect him to be kind of right in the middle of the pack, right around the 1,000, maybe 1,200 yard mark, because there's a lot of film on JSN right now after last season, over 1,800 yards worth of film. And with no running back to accommodate for that, then teams don't really have to stack the box anymore. They have to let Sam Darnold beat them through the air. And it's very hard to do that when you have two defenders on your best player. We saw a little flash in the pan with AJ Barner, their tight end. Nothing really to write home about. He was good for them. He scored the basically the go ahead touchdown. Well, they were ahead the whole game, but in the Super Bowl, he scored the first touchdown of the game for them. And it's just one of those things that I look at this now and go, well, there's no shortage of opportunity for JSN, right? He's their best player, hands down. But the opportunity comes at a cost, because the more opportunity that there is, the more teams are going to focus on it. And like I said, I just don't think that he is going to have, number one receiver numbers again. I'm happy to have him on my fantasy team. He's probably going to be a first round draft pick just based on the numbers last year, but you can't draft based on the numbers. You have to look at the situation going on. And the situation right now is that they have nobody to run the ball out of the backfield. So teams just don't have to focus as hard on that. Unless they draft somebody, but they, of course, have the 32nd pick in the draft for winning the Super Bowl. So who's to say there's really going to be any running backs out there? This running back draft class is not very good outside of Jeremiah Love, who is probably going to go to the Titans at 4. But obviously it remains to be seen. Of course, I know we're in March, so we're speculating on what's going on, but the situation has changed in Seattle significantly without them signing Kenneth Walker. Thought they were going to franchise him. They did not. Stupidly, they did not. But I guess the franchise tag for a running back would have been like $20 million or something. And I guess they just didn't think that he was worth it. But the Chiefs did. So they pick him up. They get a great running back in him. And now the Seattle offense may struggle a little bit to find separation and find openings for those wide receivers that they now just have to double team the whole time. So so as far as all your draft day adjustments, keep in mind the situation there. Anybody from the Rams is probably going to be good because, like they brought everybody back pretty much, bolstered their defense. 49ers, I would still draft Mike Evans later towards the middle of the draft if he's available as my wide receiver 2. I'd be very okay with having him on my roster again. Big Mike Evans fan. Always have been. Curious to see what he's going to do with a new quarterback, a new type of quarterback. Outside of Baker Mayfield and whoever he had, and Tom Brady, of course, he had Tom Brady there for a little bit, won a Super Bowl with him. But yeah, I mean, your draft day adjustments should be similar. Keep in mind, what you're getting out of those guys. So the only real first round draft pick, in my opinion, is Christian McCaffrey. Outside of that, you're waiting on those guys to see what you need in the later rounds. But that is going to do it for the Front Office Podcast. I appreciate you for being here for that. Episode is going to drop on Thursday, so go back to the YouTube at Pistols Live HQ to check that out. Thanks for being here.